Welcome back, everyone, to this week's Fly Culture podcast. Watching a good fly caster go about their business can be a treat to watch. The fluidity of movement and timing could almost be described as balletic. If you've seen Joan Wolfe cast, you'd probably think the same as me. Her background was also ballet. Today's guest is a wonderful caster I've seen demonstrating at shows who shares a similar history, having trained as a classic ballet dancer and has choreographed contemporary dance too. He's had a fly rod in his hand for most of his life, and I hope to learn about his interesting fly fishing career. It's a great pleasure to welcome Christopher Rownes to the Fly Culture podcast. Chris, it's great to have you along. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. How are you doing?
I'm really well, Pete, thanks. And what an honour it is to be here with you today. I love the podcast. It's kept me going through some pretty rough times here with COVID. And when I couldn't get out to the river, I've been listening to them intently, and it's just an honour to be here. Mate, thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you. I've been a fan, as I said from the beginning, having watched your wonderful fly casting, and we're going to come onto your site, the Floating Fly, a little bit later as well. I'm loving what you're doing there, and that's one of the really nice things, isn't it, about the fishing community, that we're doing these sorts of things, be it the podcast, be it your site, and the many other things that you've done as well. That it's a great way to share things with the fishing community, isn't it?
It is, and I've been very fortunate. I've met so many great people along my way in the fly fishing world, and they've given me so much, and I wanted to give something back. And I love to teach, and I love this project I'm working on, the Floating Fly, and to give back all these great things that people are giving me is really, really a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. So tell us, you're obviously not in the UK. Where are you based?
I live now in Switzerland, in Basel, with my family. And it's a wonderful place to be. I've lived actually all around Europe and seen a lot of things, but this is my home now in Switzerland.
And how long have you lived there now?
I've been living here now for 18 years, so I'm actually Swiss. I had to take a test to get a passport, and I've actually become Swiss now.
Wow. Talking about tests as well, am I right in thinking to get your fishing license you have to take an exam as well?
Yeah, that's true. You have to do a weekend course, and it's pretty thorough actually, which is really good because it shows people who are new to the sport how to handle fish with respect, and and it's a great thing for young people coming in. So I think it's actually a good thing to have.
Yeah, it sounds a really good idea. And like you say, from a handling point of view, the welfare, I guess you could bring into these sorts of things the environment and caring for the environment and everything else that goes with it, really, couldn't you?
Yeah, they encourage everybody to look after the surroundings and to take away your litter, of course, and, no leaders or anything like that on the side of the river, and just basically to look after and preserve what we have.
Yeah.
I think, and guard it for the future, for the younger generation.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, you're saying Switzerland, I'm thinking tumbling streams down mountainside, pocket water fishing. Would that be a relatively fair thought process for the fishing that you have there?
Yeah, well, I live in Basel. That's quite an industrial area. It's where all the chemical firms are. So I'm quite far away from the mountains, about 2 hours. But we have other rivers quite close to Basel. One really famous one where Charles Ritz used to fish. It's called the Doubs. It's a chalk stream, and it's a shame, but that's been very polluted over the years. But it's starting to make a really big comeback, and I love to fish there. It's really tricky, and we have these beautiful trout there, these Doubs trout, and they're striped, and they're just wonderful wild fish. I love to fish there, but it is a real challenge.
And is it similar?
Sometimes get away.
Yeah. Is it similar to what I'd think of as a chalk stream in the UK? Is there? I guess you fish the chalk streams here, and would you say it's similar, but by the sounds of it, trickier fishing?
Yeah, it's quite similar, but it's not stocked at all. It's totally wild. So the fish are very, very spooky. You need long leaders. We fish a lot with very small nymphs, nymph à vue. So you actually spot the fish and then take them with very small nymphs. And you need long leaders and very, very fine equipment. And you need a lot of patience as well. But it's a very, very good teacher, this river. I've learned a lot from the do.
Yeah. And you mentioned Charles Ritz, A Fly Fisher's Life. If anyone hasn't read it, I would recommend it. It was, he was way ahead of the curve when he was talking about rod actions and everything else, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was basically a genius, I think. He's the son of a Swiss hotelier guy, and basically dedicated his entire life to fly fishing. And I think he was an inspiration. This book, you can still read it today, and it makes so much sense. And high speed, high line, and I'm quite a fan of Charles Ritz.
Yeah, and like I was saying, the rod design stuff as well was amazing, wasn't it? And I think he was working, am I right thinking he was working with Hardy as well at some stage, and they were coming up with some of those tournament rods, because there was a casting scene there as well, wasn't there, in casting competitions and things, wasn't there?
Definitely, there's quite a big tradition in Switzerland of casting, and I think Charles Ritz was really at the forefront of it. And he was all over Europe, in Paris, and all these fly casting competitions, and he had a big hand in developing these rods for tournament casting, and had some pretty funky ways as well with trying to strengthen up the wrist with filled up wine bottles full of sand and stuff. So he was an inspiration, that man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's worth, if you get the chance, anybody, that A Fly Fisher's Life, I think it's called, and it's really, really interesting yet still contemporary, which is really cool. So let's go back down your timeline, Chris, and I'd love to know where fishing began for you. I guess that started in the UK, did it?
It did. My father was a really an outdoors person, and he dragged me and my brother to the river at the weekend. I was really into skateboarding, to tell you the truth, when I was very young. And my dad used to take us to the river, and we used to go to on the Clon. I don't know if you know, it's a very small little river in Shropshire. And bit by bit, I started to understand what my father found so fascinating with the river, because I was into Skateboard City, and Tony Alva and all these people. And I started to realise how wonderful it was to go on camp with my father for the weekend with my brother and catch fish, sometimes with a worm rod, sometimes with a fly rod, whatever would work out, and made a big impact on me. I must admit, a big influence, and to this day I still think about those days by the river with my father and enjoying just being outside and the nature and the birds. And he knew so much about wildlife, and it was inside of me, but I was quite energetic as a youngster, and I needed a challenge, really. So I was trying everything. I was trying to find the thing for myself.
And that's an interesting route in, isn't it? Because I guess a lot of the time the traditional route would have been on a still water and, catching some rainbow trout as a youngster as well. But that's a really properly in, isn't it? With on the river, mixed methods, but learning, I guess, watercraft very, very quickly, I guess, didn't you?
Yeah, my dad was quite a cheeky guy, and he knew exactly where these brown trout were hiding and were hanging out. And we used to, he used to show us exactly where they were underneath the roots, and he taught us how the river was flowing, where we could find them. So yeah, it was a great introduction, and I haven't really fished very much on still water at all. It was on these small rivers in Wales and Shropshire, and the Tanat and the Team. And I just love the intimacy of these small rivers. Even to today, it's gone all the way through. Yeah.
I've got to geek out with you for a second about skateboarding. I suspect I'm a tiny bit older, but I was Stacey Peralta and all those that was my age group. And I remember saving up. And
mine too.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I only saved up for 3 Kryptonic wheels for my skateboard, and that's as far as I got with them, and I had to buy them one by one. And I also, with a friend, remember nicking a section of fence so that we could use it as a ramp, which we did return a little bit later. But that was a wonderful time, wasn't it? And was really, that was another fashion that hit really in a very big way, didn't it? I guess in the 70s it must have been, mustn't it?
Yeah, it did. And to this day, I still sneakily watch YouTube videos of skateboarding, and I still love it. And Stacy Peralta, Dogtown, Shogo Kubo, Tony Alva, these cool guys. You know, and this, it was just a really free time, and I love skateboarding, and yeah, to this day I still love to watch it. But like I said, slowly but surely, I just sort of got more into my fishing with my dad. But I always had my skateboard with me to go down the track, the farm track, down to the river.
Nice. I like that. Well, that's a little trip down memory lane for me as well, because I remember that really fondly, and yeah, it was a hell of a lot of fun. So you said you were using bait, you said you were using a fly. Did you notice there was a transition where you moved more towards the fly rod? Was that clear in your mind when that started to happen?
Yeah, I can remember actually quite well. It was, I bought, with my pocket money, I bought an Abu Diplomat reel, a very old reel, because I just liked the look of it. And I wanted to go and try it out. And my dad was really struggling with fly casting to get the fly out at all, because he was just a brilliant worm fisherman. But I remember him struggling to get this fly out on a lake called Patsel, close to Wolverhampton. And I thought, my poor dad, he just can't get this line out. And I could see actually what was going on. Even at a young age, he was breaking the wrist, and and I just thought, I just love to see this fly line unfurling in the air and going out, and it looked so great with the other people. My dad was struggling, so me and my brother were up there trying to help him, and he managed. But it stayed with me all my life. I just love to watch a fly line unfurling. I love the finesse of it all, and how delicate you can cast. So the casting part of it is such a big part of it for me. In fly fishing, it's not just catching the fish; it's how I get there and how I approach it. And I think it's poetry to see a really good fly caster casting the fly out.
Yeah. So you realised then that was that sort of the tipping point for you, that you realised, yep, I think I'm in. More so in fly fishing, or were you continuing to do worm fishing with your dad, or was it becoming less and less and less?
It became much less, and I bought, with my brother together, I bought a fly tying vise, and we started to tie our own flies. And my dad was very enthusiastic, and he was really wanted us to get into it. I think I was quite a handful for my mum and dad, and my brother too. So I think my dad invested everything into us. So he was really happy that we were both tying flies and on the river with him together. So yeah, that was the turning point for me.
Yeah. And were you said that you had a lot of energy as a youngster. Was that where dancing came into that? Was it sort of led by your parents, or as a means to burn off some energy, or was it something that you were interested in anyway?
Well, I grew up in the Midlands, and it was quite a hard place to grow up. It was a tough time. Thatcher was around, and it was not the best place to grow up. And my parents moved to Shropshire, which is a bit more relaxed, but it was quite a heavy place to grow up in. And I just needed the challenge, Pete. I needed to get out. I needed to. I love music. My brother's to this day still working in a band. I love music. I love singing. I love the theatre. I love art. And I didn't know which way really to go. I was looking for a vocation in life. And then I started to breakdance. In the 80s, I was breakdancing, and I was competing and having battles and things. And I really loved the challenge of breakdancing. It was really, you have to be strong, you have to be physically fit, you have to be on your game. And my mom said to me, why don't you go and try out in a dance school and see if you like it? And it wasn't really the coolest thing to do in that time, to be a dancer, because my father, he renovated old houses, he was a bricklayer, and he didn't want a dancer as a son. But I went to this dance school, and I just fell in love with dance. It was so hard. It was such a challenge. You really have to work hard to be a dancer, and I needed that real push in my life. And then I knew exactly where I was going. I had one focus, and I just fell in love with dance, and then I was just in it completely. There was nothing else around me. It was like a channel vision. I was listening to music, dancing every day, 8 hours, and practicing, and I wanted to become a professional dancer because I felt that was going to be my vocation in life.
Wow. And so did fishing as a result of that go into the background for a short time?
I think almost everything did at that time. I could only think about one thing. It's so physically demanding and so mentally demanding that I just invested everything I had into becoming a classical dancer, because it really is a really tough sport, tough lifestyle. What can I say? It totally engulfed my life and the way I lived, and I only had one dream, and that was to become a professional dancer. And I trained really hard, and I was very, very fortunate. I took an audition in London, and with no hope of being accepted to a school in London, but they actually took me at the Royal Ballet School. To this day, I'm extremely grateful, and I ended up living in London for 2 years and joining the Royal Ballet School, and they just have a melting pot of the greatest teachers and art, music, and London was so thriving at that time. It was just alive, and I was just so happy to be there, and I just immersed myself in dance completely. So I completely forgot about fishing for 2 or 3 years.
It's interesting that you talked about the dancing there. How did you get from breakdancing, which again, I remember the days where you'd have your roll of lino under your arm and go there. I'm not a talented dancer by any means, but I remember watching people breakdancing again when the Rocksteady crew and everything else was around, and much more cooler stuff as well. But how did you get from breakdancing to ballet? How was that journey? Because they almost seem, in some respects, complete polar opposites. But I guess in other respects there must be similarities.
Yeah, I mean, breakdancing is extremely physical. The upper part of your body, and you need to be loose. You need to be able to move really well. But I just found. I went to a dance school in the Midlands, and I met this incredible woman called Diane Millard, and she took me under her wing, and she just basically formed me as a dancer, and I just gave myself completely to her, and it was the right thing to do. I felt it was the right thing to be with her together, and she really condensed all this ballet training that I'd missed because I started so late. I was 15 years old, and that's like way too old. And she condensed all these years of training that I'd missed into a couple of months or years. So it was extremely intense, but I was very, very, focused, and I knew where I wanted to go. I really wanted to be on the stage, and I loved the challenge of you never graduate from a dance school. You continue to learn the rest of your life, and you're taught you're never good enough. So you're constantly trying to find this perfect form. And I just found that fascinating, and I was in it.
And is it ballet that took you, I guess, to Switzerland via many other places as well, I guess?
That's right. I ended up working with Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet for a year in London, touring around the world, around Japan. And then I just wanted to see more of Europe. I wanted to move away from the UK and see what's going on outside. And I ended up, believe it or not, in Berlin a month after the wall came down. It was an incredibly crazy time, and I ended up finding a job in Berlin in the Komischoppe. And it was still East times, really. I earned East money. I was paying 15 East marks a month for my flat. So I was living in the east part of the city, but I really wanted to go there because I was fascinated with the Russian teachers, and from the Kirov and from the Bolshoi Ballet in Russia. of course the DDR was like Russia, so you had all these fantastic Russian teachers. So I really wanted to go there, and I lived in Berlin for 11 years, and worked in this dance company called the Kummershoppe. It's a great company, and I learned so much there. But I just have to say, this is in as a dancer, you have usually have a break in the middle of the day at around about 1 o'clock, and then you come back to the theatre and you dance until 10 o'clock at night, and you have rehearsals. But Berlin's such a huge city, I didn't go home because it was too far to go back home and come back. So that's when the fishing started to come back into my life, because I used to hang out in the fly fishing shop in the break, and I met a great guy there. His name's Ralph Hoffman. It was Ralph Hoffman. Slowly he passed away, but I went to this fly fishing shop and I spoke to him about wine, women, theatre, dance, philosophy, almost everything apart from fly fishing. And I really loved this guy, and he was a brilliant fly fisherman. He got me slowly back into it, and then we started to talk about dance and how I could incorporate that into my fly fishing and movement and timing, and it all started to make click. And Ralph gave me a Sage LL rod. He said, take it away for the weekend and just give it a cast and see what you think of it. And of course I took it, it's a beautiful rod, this LL, and cast it all the weekend in Thüringen in Germany in the mountains, and fell in love with this rod. And I said to Ralph, look, I can never afford this because I only earn East marks. And he said to me, I'll just give me 700 East marks. So he basically gave me this Sage rod, and I still have it. And I still secretly love to fish with it.
Wow, that's a really pivotal moment in your life, I guess, in many levels, isn't it? And not being able to go home, but meeting someone, I guess, who in many respects became a mentor on many levels by the sounds of your conversations. That must have been not a lucky chance meeting, but one of those things that I guess was almost destined and meant to be for you, wasn't it?
I think so. I think, to tell you the strength, to give you an idea of the strength of this man, in 2 weeks I fly to Berlin and I give a fly casting course. And one of my old friends said, let's get together, all the friends of this guy called Ralph Hoffman in Berlin. We get together and have a drink and talk about the old times, because he really was a brilliant man, but very, very quiet, but he gave on his knowledge. And I'm still very, very thankful to this day, and I keep his rod here and I fish it whenever I can. So yeah, it was great. He really changed my life, and I really started to think of, in that moment I thought, dance is a very short career. When you're 35, you're an old man, basically. And I started to think already, what am I going to do after I actually finish dance? And wouldn't it be cool to make this vocation, or this I was very lucky to find dance, but to maybe to work in the fly fishing industry, that would be like another massive chance where I could really chat. And then I started to think already about the future, maybe in the fly fishing world. Everybody told me, forget it, it's impossible. But I thought maybe there's a chance to get in some way, selling equipment, teaching somehow. And like all dancers, with 32, 33, you go into retirement. And I was married to a Spanish lady, and we had a daughter together, Alba, my beautiful Alba. She's 21 now. And I moved to Spain because my wife was Spain, so I lived in Spain for 3 years. And that was like a real catalyst of how the future could turn out for me.
And so whereabouts were you in Spain? Was that thought about working in fly fishing, did that coincide with the location of where you were, the available fishing and everything that went with it?
Not at all, really, to tell you the truth. I was living in Valencia, and I think, like most people around the world, Spain, in your head, is a dry country. There's not much fishing there at all. It's just wine and toreros and paella. And I must admit, I did get a bit of a depression. I thought I would, I didn't really know what to do with my life, because it's such a huge void when you finish dancing, because you're living in this bubble of the dance theatre world. And I went a bit down. I didn't really know what to do with my life. And then I started to go to a club, believe it or not, in Valencia. There's a fly fishing club, meets every Thursday evening. It's called Imes. It's a bit like the Wild Trout Society in the UK. And they meet every Wednesday evening. You can take a bocadillo with you, like a sandwich, and they buy wine, and you all talk about flies and talk about, somebody makes a fly, somebody shows how to make leaders, somebody talks about rod actions. And then I started to realise, oh my God, these Spanish anglers, they're really, really good. The flies they were tying, coq de leon, they were using silk with gloves. They were tying flies with gloves on so it wouldn't damage the silk. And the delicacy of these flies, I thought, God, these flies are amazing. And then they were talking about leaders of like 4 meters long. I was like, never heard. Or 5 meters and stuff. So I went out fishing with these people, and I realised, wow, there's a whole other world out there of fly fishing culture. They were using silk lines for very, very delicate presentations. And they were catching really big fish. And then they said, oh, you have to come with us to Leon. And you can come and get some feathers from the farmer yourself. So I travelled up north with all my friends there and saw these chickens. Bought some real coq de leon, which is, when you see it in real life, it's amazing. And I started to fish in the Porma, in the Orbigo. There's some rivers up there, the Rio Luna. There's some rivers in Leon, which are absolutely wonderful. So I just dived in head first. I had to learn Spanish in a week. I just wanted to learn to be able to speak to these fishermen. So I learned Spanish, and to this day, again, I was just very, very lucky to take some of this information with me back home. I still fish in this style with long leads, and I really am a big fan of the fly tyers from Spain.
Yeah, the fishing there, I've been fortunate to fish on the way to Andorra in Catalonia there, which was almost life-changing, because I think I've mentioned it on here before, the barbel as well that I discovered in the rivers, which were absolutely phenomenal. But it takes me back to when I was guiding, and there was a gentleman, Rafa, that I used to guide from Lyon, and wow, was he an angler. Yeah. Was he an angler? He was just absolutely fan. I didn't even know why. In the end, we ended up fishing together, and because we had such a good time. And I thought, there's not a lot I can show you. I can show you where the fish are in the river, but your technique and skill was just absolutely fantastic. So yes, I have a very strong feeling for the fishing there and everything that goes with it. It was interesting, you talked about feeling low coming to Spain. Was that sort of coinciding with the end of your dancing career and the lack of fishing? And then it must have been, as you've described, a massive boost finding like-minded people that you could express that passion for and reignite it, I guess, in some respects.
Yeah, like I said, when you, I think I can speak for all dancers in this way. It's so enthralling and so compact, the life of a dancer, is that when you actually finish, you're in a bubble, because you're in the theatre, you were protected, so you didn't have to think about, tax and things like that. It was all sorted out. You just have to go and perform, and then when that floor is taken away from you, you just drop. And that was what happened to me, really, because I wasn't really sure what to do, because I'd invested so much time and effort into dancing. I didn't really have time for anything else on the side. So yeah, I did fall down a little bit, but yes, what can I say? I went to this club in Spain, and I met these people, and then one of the guys there said to me, Jose Ricardo Mateo, his name is, he said to me, "Oh, Chris, in 2 weeks' time, a friend of mine's coming from America, and he's going to give a lecture about fly casting. Would you like to come to the lecture?" And I said, yeah. And I said, "What's his name?" And he said, "His name's Mel Krieger." So I went to this meeting in Valencia, with my sandwich in the hand and a glass of wine. And this guy came in. Just the way he walked was cool. And he walked in and he gave this talk about fly fishing and fly casting and teaching of fly casting. And I just realised this is a mentor. This is like a fly casting guru, probably an amazing teacher. I just wanted to learn everything I could from this man because he had such a power to engage people, even people who weren't really interested in fly fishing. He was so powerful. I just thought, I've got to hang out with this guy. I've got to follow him, some kind of like a disciple or something. I don't know. I can't really explain it. But his wife, Fanny, she latched onto me straight away and said, "You're going to translate Mel's book into German." That was the first thing she said to me. And I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I did it. I translated Mel's book into German. And then because of that, Mel Krieger came to Germany and Austria and Switzerland and Sweden, all over the place. And I followed him and translated his courses into German and Spanish. And I just wanted to further his teaching as much as possible, that as many people could meet this fabulous man. I mean, he was just full of energy and love, basically. He was just such a cool guy and an amazing teacher. I just learned so much from him.
His book, if any of the listeners aren't aware of it, is called The Essence of Fly Casting. And for me, that was a seminal book as a instructor as well. And the thing that I loved about it was that he explained a lot, but in a non-technical manner. And I still use the phrase and think about the phrase wump for the casting stroke. Yeah. And it still makes me smile. And I guess at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff. And I know we were talking off mic and, Ed Jurowski's book as well, I guess, was out. Would that have been at a similar sort of time as well? But there wasn't a lot an aspiring fly caster, an aspiring instructor could really get stuck into. I guess in some respects were there. And that one for me made so much sense, beautifully photographed, eloquently written, and made perfect sense. It must have been thrilling to see that from the inside. And one of my great regrets is that I never got to see him cast or talk about fishing. And I still think about that because his book had a profound impact on me too.
Oh. I'm sure you'd love to have heard that, saying that. I think his book was a milestone in angling literature. I think he told me he had an old shack next to a river in Northern California, and he went there at the weekends to condense the book, because it started out quite big, and every weekend or very often he went to this very, very humble little shack and condensed the book, and he wanted to get it down to 100 pages. So he completely compressed it into its essence, and I think that's the magic of that book. It really is the essence of fly casting. Of course, some of the things now, because everything's been investigated with cameras and stuff, you can prove some things are wrong or right. But I think the essence of it is still so valuable today. And his teaching was teaching, and the way he could communicate, well, it was just unsurpassed. Even my dance teachers, that I had very, very good dance teachers, they couldn't convey movement as simply and so understandably as he could. And that was a big thing for me, because after I stopped dancing, I was teaching dance, and I thought to myself, I'm going to use his teaching methods in my dance classes, because he makes it so understandable. So I was using Mel Krieger's fly casting philosophy with my dancers, and it started to click. The kids all of a sudden were getting better. They were improving, because I tried to make it as simple as possible. But that's the most difficult thing, I think, is to reduce a complex matter to its simplest form. And Mel was just a genius in that.
What was his background then? Was it teaching of some sort, or was it just the amount of time he invested in making, as you say, stripping everything back?
I think Mel had a travel agency, but I think before that he was a salesman. He had the gift of the gab. Yeah, I don't know. He was just a very wise man and very well read and eloquent, and always had a poem or a great joke to say at the end of a meal. And it was just like a magnet. And I can tell you one quick story. Hopefully, it's not getting boring. But I was translating a course in Spain for Mel, and we went to this big old shooting lodge, and all these guys from Madrid came with their wives and kids to this old hunting lodge, and they all walked in, and it was a big open roaring fire, and everybody was drinking red wine and really like psyched up for the next day. And Mel said to me, "Tell everybody I'm very disappointed with everybody." And I said, "I can't do that, Mel. This is Spain. They'll freak out." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Just tell everybody I'm totally disappointed with everybody already." And I plucked up the courage, and I said to the people, I said, "Mr. Krieger says that he's not very happy with the people who are attending the course." And they're all like, "What? We haven't even done anything. What's the problem?" And he said, "You've brought all your wives, you've brought all the kids, and not one woman and not one man is, not one woman or one child is taking the course tomorrow." And he said, "I want to see all the women and all the children with a rod in their hand tomorrow." And he left. Just left. So I was stuck there with all these people trying to, it was quite a heavy moment. And the next day, they all turned up. All the kids, all the wives, and they were all there on the course. We had to scrape rods together from left, right and centre. And then Mel had such a way to explain things so simply that these women, they just picked it up. They just picked it up. They could do the double haul after a day. They were having fun. And then the men were looking at them and seeing that they were improving. So there was like this tension between the women and the men. And he used to come over and say to the lady, "Oh, you're really great. You've made so much improvement." And then he would walk on to the men who were really like pulling themselves together. So at the end of this course, everybody was casting really well. So it was an incredible weekend. And that was a story from Mel Krieger, great guy.
Wow. I could listen to stories about him for hours, but this one's about you. And I guess as a result, did you see a very sharp improvement or change in your casting and the instruction? I guess you'd become an instructor by then as well, had you? Or you were in the process of becoming one?
Yeah. It was the process. I was in the process of becoming an instructor, and the way that Mel taught just formed me as a teacher to be open-minded to many different styles and not to be dogmatic. And I've had the fortune to teach many people who have stiff shoulders, who don't have a finger like this, it's been cut off, or they're in a wheelchair, and be open-minded to different fly casting styles. I mean, I've been all around Europe, so I know the Geburtsreuter style, I know Lefty Cray, and I know many different ways to fly cast. I just try to keep open-minded, and that's the way I try to go forward in my instruction these days, is to just help people and to, get them to where they want to go, but there are many ways to get there.
I was thinking what you were saying actually about that, and I think it's probably had a big impact in how I used to teach people, in the sense of explain it so they can understand it, that you get technical but don't get technical in that sense. And sometimes it can be easy, and I understand an instructor wanting to impart knowledge to a student, but sometimes that can be too much, can't it? And they're trying to hang on to everything, whereas getting the basics right and building on that is a much better way, I think, of getting people to improve their casting.
I think it lies in their own capable hands, the students, and you just have to basically direct them. When I was teaching with Mel together, we weren't allowed to touch the rod. We never take the rod off a student and say, look, guys, this is how it goes. That was totally not allowed. We could just talk to them and encourage them and give them enough time as well to for self-discovery. Usually, because we're as instructors, we all know this, we want to help so much. We overload the students with too much information. But you have to give them time as well to discover it themselves and maybe open a door, but let them go through it alone. I think that's important. Not to be too technical at the beginning and then let them find their own style.
Yeah, I love that. The word I used to use too was self-discovery, and I think that's a really important one. And if we had guides and instructors working with them, that was a term we use. And one of the questions I wanted to ask was, as when you came to taking those casting qualifications and you went on, or you've gone on, to be a master instructor as well, I suspect I know the answer of this, getting to know you and how passionate and driven you are about a subject. But when you came to take that first exam, did you feel a sense of pressure given who your mentor was? You wanted to do well for you, obviously. You wanted to do well for Mel. Did you feel any? I'm not 100% sure that was the case, having listened to you talk, but I'd be fascinated to know.
Well, yeah, actually, Mel Krieger actually tested me. It was just after I'd met him. So I'd only met him like a week before. And then it was in Spain. I took the test in Spain, but I'd already been taking quite a few lessons in, in Europe. You have phenomenal flycasters in Switzerland, Germany, Austria. There's a huge tradition with the Gebertsreuter style. Hans Gebertsreuter is a famous river keeper from Austria, and beautiful style. And there were so many great people around. I was very lucky because I lived in Berlin, and Paul Arden had a girlfriend, crazy girlfriend, and we used to hang out together in Berlin. So I'd already started my teaching way. But through dance, you get so focused in. I knew how to prepare myself. I knew what was expected. And I think that was it. I just wanted to go for it, and I wanted to do the best I possibly could. So I was practicing every day. My daughter Alba was 1, so I had her in the pushchair in the park, and I used to put the bottle in. She went to sleep, and I got my rod out, and I was practicing for 1 or 2 hours every day. I was quite famous in Berlin, the crazy dad, casting on the Spielplatz on the where the kids play. So yeah, I took them very seriously because they meant so much to me, and I admired the people. I mean, on my certificate, you have Joan Wolfe, Doug Swisher, Gary Borger, all these icons. I was like, oh God, I love it. I just want to be part of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. I said in the intro as well that I had the pleasure of watching you demonstrate at the London Fly Fishing Fair, which I think were 3 of them, which had huge potential, and I think we're probably down to 1 show now. Do I sense, though, in Europe that is something that is continuing to grow, and people are still attending shows, people are still going to those? Do they look at it differently to the way that we do in the UK, do you think?
Well, first of all, I absolutely loved the London show, and I thought the work that John and Fergus did and all the team was just awesome, and I really miss it, to tell you the truth. I wish more people would have attended it. I thought it was a bit crappy that there was still a lot of people there, but I thought it was had such a high quality, and there were so many great people there to meet, like yourself, Paul Proctor. There was loads of great people there, and it was such a pity that it wasn't. But that's just a shame. I miss that. In Europe we have the EWF. That's called the Erlebniswelt Fliegenfischen. That's a huge show in Munich, which is just a brilliant show. It's a huge event. It's in an old what's it called in English? A cloister, like an old place where the monks used to get together. Yeah. It's like an old, big, huge place, and there's huge casting pools there, and outdoors and indoors, and about 3,000 people visit it every year. So it's a huge place to go and show yourself and to demonstrate. And the people are quite particular. They know what they're looking at, so you have to do a good show. You can't be too technical. It has to be entertaining, but you still have to cast very well. And so I love to go to that show. And I just thought it's been, because of COVID, it hasn't been on now for nearly 2 years. So I'm hoping we have it in October again, and it's coming back again next year. So that's a wonderful place to meet up. So if you want to go to a fly fishing show, just jump on a plane and come over to Munich. And there's fabulous fly tyers from all around Europe. That's where I started to get the idea about this project I'm working on now, the floating fly, because there's so much information that we just, like in France, the French fishermen are amazing, but I don't speak French. So to get that information out, and I've got friends now who help me translate things, because I want to find out why they're so good, there's so excellent fly fishermen there.
That sounds really interesting, and the show, we'll come on to the floating fly shortly, but that's fascinating to hear 3,000 people attending, which I don't know how many go to the remaining British Fly Fair show. It may be similar, it may be more, it may be less, I don't know. But that's phenomenal numbers, isn't it, just for one place? And it shows us that there are many places, as you've alluded to with the floating fly, that we can learn from. And sometimes I wonder we can be too blinkered in how we look at things. And there are people doing things on different rivers, as we're river anglers mainly, I guess, that you can learn from, that is completely, and I'm coming back to Rafa, I learned some interesting stuff at how he was approaching and looking at those sorts of things. But you've done the shows, you've been translating, you're qualified, I guess you're guiding, you're instructing, and then you're working with Guideline now as well as a sales agent. And that must be a fascinating role to be involved in, to be in that community in Europe.
Yeah, that's another. I was extremely fortunate again in my life. When I stopped dancing, I was teaching a lot of dance in good schools all around the place, around Europe, and then I started to get it. I started to get a bit tired of teaching, and I was worried that the standard would go down. So I was looking again for a new challenge, and I was asked for a really great shop in Germany called Adiha Fishing. It's a very, very big shop, great shop. He asked me to come and demonstrate at the show. So I was demonstrating at the show, and I know Alex, the guy who owns the shop, very well. I've taught his son to fly cast, and then at the show I met this. I was just lucky again. It's a guy called Leif Stavmo. He's the designer or rod designer. He makes all the products, the hardware products, the Guideline. And he's a phenomenal person, super nice guy, open-minded, has so much information about rod building, about fly lines, reels. He's just a guru. And I met up with this guy, and it was like talking to an old friend. Got on with him straight away, and I thought to myself, wow, if I would go anywhere, it would be to Guideline, because they produce these amazing salmon rods, these amazing shooting heads, lines, reels, everything for salmon fishing. But sort of undercover were the trout rods and the trout lines. Nobody really talked about them very much. The LPXE, still to this day, I think it's one of the best rods. And some of the lines that Leif Stavmo designed, the high water, the forecast, it's just brilliant lines. So I thought to myself, if I can get involved with this company somehow and bring my enthusiasm for river fishing, trout fishing, grayling, things like that, maybe I could make an impact. And now I work for Guideline as a sales agent for Central Europe, and I think we've really pushed out some really good equipment now, and it's improving all the time. And I use my influences by meeting brilliant anglers around the world, and I bring that in. And Life's super open-minded, and we're developing new rods for dry fly, for nymph fishing, new leaders, new rods, reels, lines. Yeah, I'm just very lucky to be part of a great team. I mean, Jim Corrie, Leif Stavmo, Andreas Müller, Brian Stirrup, this is just brilliant anglers. it's like a big melting pot. They're very open-minded, so I'm really happy.
And I get the sense that you're involved with development of products as well.
Yeah, sometimes I get the chance to assist. Like, I'm not a developer of any sort, I'm just a salesman, but every now and then he asks me for my personal opinion, and I can put in my 2 pennies worth. And yes, I'm very lucky that he even asked me, because he really is the rod master, the rod father. I mean, that guy, he's a genius.
Yeah. And have you noticed during these strange times, as has been reported in the UK, that there has been an uptick in interest in fly fishing as a result of people not being able to travel or wanting to get out into the countryside a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of being from this COVID, this terrible thing, is that more people are getting into outdoor sports. Their mountain bikes are selling like never before, and people are getting out. And definitely, I know this from the fishing clubs in Switzerland and Germany. The applications are double. I mean, there's double the amount of people trying to get into these fishing clubs now, and interested in fishing, which is just wonderful. New young people getting into it. Strangely enough, there's lots of people who snowboard in the winter, are fly fishing in the summer. Some of my best friends are snowboarders. So it's a cool thing to do. I think it gets people outside, and they appreciate now our environment more than before. I think it's one of the upsides of the COVID.
Cool. Yeah, that's great to hear, and long may that continue. I wanted to move on to the floating fly now, because I think this is as somebody who loves reading about experts, and I remember a book years back, and I think when I did a book selection with Gareth, actually, I mentioned Wisdom of the Guides, which was just interviews with fishing guides from around Montana and the US as a whole. And this is, again, another case of where perhaps you'd explain to me a little bit about how the floating fly came about and what it is and what people can get from reading from it.
Yeah, to fish with a dry fly is my absolute passion. I just love dry fly fishing. I love all sorts of fishing, but dry fly fishing for me is peak for me personally. And I was just very fortunate when I travelled around as a dancer. I had a suitcase and I put in a 6-piece rod, and the boss of the dancing company didn't know, but if I had any free time, I was out fishing in the local rivers in Switzerland, in Italy, in France, in Slovenia. I was dancing somewhere, but I actually had my rod in my bag, so as soon as the performances were finished, I was out fishing. And I used to just look up guides and go out, and then I started to realise there's such a diversity in fly fishing, even in small subjects of dry fly fishing. It's so many different ways to do it. And then I think the big catalyst was going to Bosnia and meeting these guides from Bosnia and seeing these flies they were tying, and then it all made sense, because in Switzerland we have the CDC feather was actually sort of originated here in Switzerland in the Jura Mountains, and Marc Petitjean has made it very, very popular now. So I started to see all these nuances in fly fishing from around the world, and I thought, some of these masters from around the world, they come and they go, and all this information is lost. What a pity. Or the language barrier of Spanish or French. So I thought, I'd love to document this. So these great masters, their wisdom is just not lost somehow, and pass it on to future generations, and at the same time improve my own fishing, because I just learned so much from reading what they write, and I love to read, fishing books, fly fishing books, but to get from the horse's mouth, from the really good guides and how they do it, how they approach it, I thought this would be fascinating. So it's more of just a project for myself, and that I give to the world, and I'm very fortunate people are getting into it, they're writing for it, brilliant people. There's a lot more to come, some really fascinating things. Some of it's very controversial. some of it's everybody knows it. So there's always something to learn inside of it, and I find it fascinating. And yeah, that's my floating fly project.
And it takes the basis of a form of questions, doesn't it? That the interviewee answers to get an insight into their thought process for dry fly fishing.
That's right. It's in the form of 11 questions, and I pose the same questions to everybody, and they also give photos and sometimes videos to explain what they're talking about, and it's like a common thread for everybody. And I just look forward to putting them online every week or every month as much as I can. And there's so much knowledge there from around Europe and around the world, from South Africa, from all over the place. And it's this passion that we have for fly fishing, and it's so global, but actually we all have the same love, and we can bring your own interpretation into it. I think that's very, very cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think, would I be right in thinking it's Lefty Cray saying a good instructor shares knowledge, he doesn't or she doesn't show knowledge? And I think that's the great thing about these sorts of projects, sharing that with people at the top of their game is really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a pleasure to be able to pass on knowledge from other great people, and I'm just a medium that they go through, and I just want people to, if they're interested, they can find like a database of information from some of the greatest anglers out there. I think there's so much more to learn, and I'm still trying to get some of the big names involved. They're a bit, but I mean, I've had some of the greatest anglers I've ever seen are involved. Paul Proctor and Charles and Alex and many, many more from around Europe, and now thankfully also anglers from France who I really admire, and Spanish anglers who have got so much to. Yeah, Luis Miena, he's just a legendary guide from the north of Spain. I mean, this guy is quite something, and his fly tying. Yeah, it's a fascinating project, and I look forward to doing it as long as I can. And also to teaching. I teach fly casting quite a lot. I'm teaching almost 3 or 4 times a week still, and I'm always learning from my students and try to keep open-minded. And yeah, you never graduate from the fly casting school.
Yeah, you're dead right there. You're dead right. I always think as well with these well-known people as they get older, and I'm sure you got the chance to do so with Mel, that I always try and drop a message or whatever to let them know what they've meant to me and how they've influenced me. And I was sad to hear of the passing of Taft Price just recently, who I have some of his fly tying books and never got the chance to say that to him, and I wish I did. And I think via projects that you're doing and other things, it's easier to reach these people, and I think it's really cool. And even in other spheres, non-fishing related, I always try and say thank you to somebody that it had an impact on me, because I think it means a lot to them. And I think things like this are a really great way to get access to these sorts of people's thought process, but also, if it's possible, is to thank them for it as well, isn't it? To me, it's a really important thing to be able to do.
That's just a great thing, yeah. I don't know, maybe getting a bit sentimental now, but my sister's husband died very young with cancer, with 30, and he was such an influence on me as a young man. Great guy, full of life, and I really never really had the chance to tell him that. So I thought to myself, if somebody influences me in my life and I really like them, I'm just going to tell them, even if it's embarrassing. I'm just going to do it. And that's been with me all my life now. If I find somebody's doing something great or pushing something further forward, I don't have any problem with telling them and saying, God, I think you're doing a great job, and I really respect you, and you're super cool, and keep up the good work. And I know I'm speaking for many, many people here. I don't have a problem saying that. So I told him I loved him as a man, but he was a cool guy. And I think I try to carry on with that. And if somebody's doing a great thing like that, tell them what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Now, we're coming up an hour now, and I think there is so much more I want to talk about. But I wanted to, you touched on that you've travelled a fair bit with fishing. Is there somewhere that has a very special place in your heart? I'll tell you what, I always say one, but let's give you two places that are really special to you, and why?
That's a good one, because I like so many places, but I adore, I love Iceland, the Laxa in the north of Iceland. I think it's a magical place. I love to really go there every year, and I host trips there. And 3 or 4 weeks on the Laxa, I get to know it better and better every year, and that's just a wonderful place to be. I don't know if you know this story, Pete. There were two brothers who live on the Laxa. Used to be two twin brothers who lived on the Laxa, and they wanted to build a dam at the top of the Laxa River by Meerwatsvit, and they started to build this dam at the top. And these two brothers, these identical brothers, went out, bought TNT or gelignite, and they exploded the dam, and they destroyed the dam. And then the police came and wanted to find out who'd blown up this building site of the dam. And the whole village came out and said, it was all of us.
Oh, lovely. And
this river, it's a holy river. I think there's like a plaque there now where they blew up the dam in memory to these two brothers who saved this holy river. So I love to go there, and I love to bring people there and show them this fabulous river. There's something special about the energy. What I was going to say, I was very, very fortunate to give a fly casting course about 6 years ago, and there was a guy on there, interesting guy, army soldier, parachutist, banker, all at the same time. Spoke to this guy and he said, you should come to New Zealand. And I said, I don't know anybody in New Zealand. I don't know how to get to the rivers. I've got no idea. And he said, just come with me. So I went with this guy called Jan Ekman. He's quite tough. He's a soldier guy. So we went out camping there, and I must say the South Island of New Zealand is a very, very special place. I was very lucky to meet Micah Patrick, a phenomenal guide and a phenomenal man, and to fish with him together, and to walk for miles into these breathtaking valleys and to see these trout. It's just, that's pretty high up there.
Yeah, it's a pretty special place, isn't it? And it's interesting. I think you could almost draw parallels now, can't you, with Iceland and New Zealand in, if you are looking for the trout of your lifetime. It seems to me that Iceland, was more seen initially as a salmon destination, but in subsequent years, the phenomenal trout fishing that is available there, and it doesn't kill you to get down there either, does it? It's not exhausting to get there, which is a whole lot easier.
No, it's not. Yeah, I mean, it's quite close. It's only 3 or 4 hours away, and it's not as wild, of course, as New Zealand, but you can catch really, really beautiful trout on a dry fly, big fish, and it's a challenge. I mean, the rivers are not so deep, so they really run. You need a lot of backing. You need strong hooks. It's not a piece of cake like everybody says it is to catch the really big ones. You need to be stealthy, and you need to be delicate with your presentation. You need to have a choreography. You need to know where you're going to run when you hook that big fish, how it's going to react and stuff. But there's another place I forgot to mention. I used to go to Kolofka and fish for trout there. I was 10 or 12 weeks up there, and you fly out with a helicopter and they drop you off for a week, and then in the middle of the week you take it to another place. That is probably the remotest place I've ever been in my life, because there's just nothing there. You've got no telephone connection, you've got no people, you don't see the tracks of human beings at all, and it's breathtaking to see those big Russian trout rising on the Kolovka and Litsa rivers. I feel very privileged to have seen that and to experience these hatches where everything is hatching. It's just a cloud of flies, everything you can think of, stoneflies, mayflies, everything you can think of all at once. And then these huge Icelandic trout rises. Wow.
Nice.
I get shivers just thinking about it. So those three places I love. But I must say, every now and then when I get the chance, I come back to the UK and I go down to the rivers where I used to fish. I don't know, if I can get back into the Midlands, I go up to the team. I like to fish. I love the intimacy of the small streams in the UK. And of course the fish are not as big, but they're jewels anyway. They're jewels, they're perfect in every way. So I appreciate small trout, of course, just as much as the big ones.
Well, it was really fascinating for me when you described those the Icelandic trout. You had me because the first thing you said, they were beautiful, not big. And that was very key for me, I have to say, and really wonderful to hear that. And lovely, fabulous places. And like you say, the intimacy of those small streams of the UK and other places is something special. But I guess they're all beautiful wild brown trout, aren't they?
Yeah. I haven't met an ugly one until now.
Fantastic. Chris, it's been, like I say, I could speak to you for absolutely hours. I think we share a love and a feeling for what we do in fishing, and I think we could carry on for hours. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. If people want to get hold of you for instruction, how do they do that? And also, if they want to read The Floating Fly, how do they find that?
That's kind of it. I've got two web pages for my fly casting. It's christopherrownes.com, and for the floating fly, it's thefloatingfly.com, all written together. And please get in touch with me if you have anything to say about dry fly fishing, or you want to meet up for a casting lesson, or you want to go fishing. You're in Switzerland and you need some tips about the Swiss mountains or something. Give us a call or send me an email, and I'd love to get back to you. No problem.
Fantastic. Chris, it's been absolutely fabulous speaking to you. Thank you again for taking the time and for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, mate.
Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one. We've covered lots of ground today, and I hope you find this interesting listening. I'm sure you will. Thanks so much for listening. And as ever, there'll be plenty more. If you're enjoying what we're doing, let me know. As you know, I always reply. I get ideas from listeners for who I could interview as well. But I always love hearing from you. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for writing the kind reviews. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for listening to the Fly Culture podcast.